Hello, 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 and welcome back to this podcast with no name right now. I am still figuring that one out. I've got a couple or a contender, but I'm not quite sure yet. But an update that I am really sitting with these past few days is that I'm going to be dirty 30 in 2 days. And I had this inspiration while I was at work, and I work at a plant nursery. For any kind of background on me, I'm the caretaker for a landscaping company, and I manage their plot of land with lots of beautiful plants on it. And it's very therapeutic. And as I was watering the plants today, I thought that at the end of every year, I often do a big reflection on what's happened and lessons I've learned. I'm actually curious to almost pull out my journal and see what's on there. I didn't even think of that until this moment. But I don't often do one on my birthday. And I feel that this is such a milestone in my life and for everyone that goes through. That is Saturn's vicious, beautiful return. And if you're unfamiliar with that, I am going to dive into that a little bit today, as I have a little bit of a nerdy side for astrology, and it's really guided me and shaped me. And a friend of mine who I'd love to have on the pod one day and soon is a genius in astrology. And this past year, when I was really going through it and on the tail end of the third strike of Saturn's viciousness, I really feel that astrology was one of those things that genuinely saved me, genuinely made me think a lot about what in my life makes sense and what I need to be focusing my energy and attention on to basically succeed through Saturn's return, as it's something that comes for all of us around our 27th year, 28th year, and 29th year. And it happens every 29 and a half years. So it comes back twice, everybody. Be prepared. If you didn't realize it the first time, but you were in your late 20s and you're like, wow, some real shit went down. Yeah, it did. And if you breezed right through it, then good for you, because you're one of the few that really did a good thing. You did good. That, or perhaps you didn't learn the lessons that you needed to learn and now you're still going through them. Saturn is a time where there is not a lot of mercy for the person in that space. And I really I'm going to go into more definitions of it and everything, but my friend Josh really said this very well, and it's not a direct quote, but it's that when we're young, before we get sort of, I want to use the word corrupted, but that might be intense, but before we get sort of convinced and swept away in modern world and in growing up and influenced by society, we are these little people that know what we want and like what we like. And we almost really are secure in who we are until like about 7 years old, kind of when public school starts, but I'm not deeming that to be the reason. However, it's a time in your life where you really start to see a lot of people and are introduced to a lot of children, and your personality starts to kind of shift because you have influence. You see things that aren't what you know anymore, and you decide in your brain that you either like this or you don't like this. And there's a lot of really important discernment. I mean, who are we playing with? Who do we want to be our friends? And it starts very innocent, but it really reflects and ripples from the inside outward into the world when we get a little older and we forget who we were before we had that influence. And Saturn's return is returning us to that character. And it's quite effortless if we don't resist that. And if we do move towards that person that we were when we were a kid, if we can remember and if we can access those parts. Because what we liked then, if we're not doing it now, there's a disconnect. And that disconnect is because we've probably either moved in a direction that has to do with money and making decisions off of financial security and stability, instead of actually maybe choosing a career path that is more aligned with who we are at our centers and our cores. And I think that remembering to be who you were is often difficult because it's such a space that we lose access to. I think what happens is in our Saturn return, we're really greatly challenged. And in those challenges, it guides us to go back there if we listen and if we want to learn, because there's plenty of resistance if we want it. There's plenty of resistance if we don't step up. And the thing is, whatever we resist persists. And I think that's a really big part of all of this. Let's just dive backwards real quick, because Saturn return is the cosmic rite of passage that occurs when Saturn returns to the exact position it occupied at your birth. It marks the end of one major life cycle and the initiation into a new, more mature phase. And so these 20s of ours are such a great space of exploration if we let it be. And honestly, a lot of pain, especially if you are in and out of relationships frequently, or, you know, you've definitely dated a couple people in that time. I know that I certainly was in and out of some really hard relationships that really taught me so much. And it was such a different experience than like a high school relationship, right? It's these ones I took so seriously, and it was almost everyone had to be my life partner or was, you know, thought in the background to be, but then in a reality, I like knew that they weren't going to be that in my life, but almost a clinging because a societal pressure makes you feel like every person has to be that person for you. And I find that in my 20s, I really got serious. It was such a point of, like, I got out of college and I just needed the career right away. I needed to be successful, and what society told me, I needed a 401k, I needed a full-time job, and it had to be in my degree. And I put so much of these macro pressures, because really they turned into big things. And when it didn't happen, I was devastated. And I was like, I'm a loser. And I put all that weight back on myself. And it didn't matter what anyone else thought. It was always me against me during this time period. And mind you, I'm a Virgo, so being hard on myself and critical is kind of big and kind of been a theme in my life, and I'm sure all my Virgos out there, please reach out, comment, and relate, please, because it's the truth. I remember when I got out of college, and it really was a couple years later, and I started teacher assisting, and I absolutely loved it. I was working at a BOCES trade school, and I was driving the most impractical vehicle. It was a 2000 Jeep Cherokee. It was lifted. It was awesome. I loved it. It was my baby. But I was working full-time for the first time in my life in a steady form. I had worked at a deli for 6 years prior to that, and my shifts were all over the board. It didn't seem professional or societally correct. This job, I was working 7 to 3, 5 days a week, and it felt like the job that society encourages you to get, and also my dad, to be quite frank. And I remember being so broke. And I was thinking to myself that, you know, here I am in this societally approved career path that all I had to do was get more schooling and I could have a career. This is setting me up. I felt so great in that respect. And actually, I really did love the job 100%. It was probably one of my favorite jobs. And it was actually a shame when I came to find out that my paychecks were not even filling my gas tank. And here I am. I think I'm 23 years old. I finally have the successful career en route, and I can't even afford anything. And the only way to get a raise was to go back to school and go find debt. So this was like a really rude awakening for me. And I actually do remember, too, a woman who was also working there as a substitute teacher. And she was in the art classroom. And she gave me some pretty unwarranted advice that was, honey, I have a husband who can take care of me. And I can have this job. You can't work in this job. It's not going to sustain you. You need to find something else. And it was shocking. I didn't ask her for this advice. But you know what? She actually wasn't wrong. And it did make me think and consider, well, here we go again. What do I do next? And so this is that point in my life that I just took everything so seriously because it feels like a race to the top of something that isn't even really there. And I really hope that that comes through for everyone that's in that age of 25 and younger. And I would even argue to 27 and younger that take the time you need and to not really rush the unfolding of who you are and what you really love to do. I worked so many different jobs in that time period, and I ate myself alive for it because I kept changing things. And when I grew up with boomer parents, it was just the motto to always get the career, the one job you're going to do for 25 plus years with a pension, with retirement, with a 401k. And if you don't do that, then I'm worried about you. What are you going to do with yourself? What are you going to do with your life? And I never felt like I fit in that box. And I never wanted to fit in that box. I mean, going to school and getting a bachelor's degree in photography and fine arts was me announcing to the world and myself that I don't fit in that fucking box. And I don't want to. But my parents thought otherwise. My father especially was definitely a little voice on my shoulder constantly saying, what are you doing with your life? You're making me nervous. Time is passing. And then, my other kind of father figure who I love both of them. And I appreciate them now that I transmuted all of this into something beautiful, right? There's a lot of hindsight. But his was, you're only getting older and you're going to be washed up and no one's going to, and it's really hard to navigate life. I was that 7-year-old girl or younger, knowing sort of what I liked, and the whole world around me was not feeling supportive of that. And I put a ton of pressure on myself until I decided to leave New York and move to Wyoming when I was 25. I'm gonna make another episode on that, but I just want to say a good takeaway from that entire experience was to live life, to do the things that society actually does not encourage you to do, and pretty much do everything in your heart is a big takeaway. And even in doing the things that you want to do in your heart, you end up doing so many things that you never thought you'd be able to do. I remember I had a bucket list, and when I moved to Wyoming, I did so much more than I could have imagined or dreamed was even a thought on my bucket list. And it was all just outdoor fun because I've always loved the mountains. And it was always a part of my heart that was very restricted, living on an island that was suburban, landlocked. Even worse, I was going to college in a cinder block jungle. So all of those parts denied pieces of me. And I always loved this dualistic life in my 20s. I had my home comforts and my Long Island life, and then I had a boyfriend at that time, and then I could go to the city and I could unfold this really unique independence and thrive for that and feel like I'm absorbing and open and go back home to my comfort. And then when I was 25 and I moved to Wyoming, that just heightened because I now had this life that taught me so greatly about so much things that I loved. And I explored so much land and I met incredible people. And it showed me that this life is so much about the journey and connection throughout it. I don't think I realized in my early 20s how magnetized I am to attracting really, really beautiful people. And that is the core of this podcast. When I start recording episodes that isn't just me, it's the unfoldment of my life and the people in it that I've met along the way. And that is something to come with this and an intention of this. But I was really in the midst of understanding how wonderful and open and big the world is. I went from being a New York girl who loves to road trip and drive everywhere and to this other section of the US. And I did it alone. I did it without anyone's approval. And the irony in that is that it actually gained more approval and love and respect from my father. For the first time in my life, doing something so irrational that as moving to Wyoming from New York. And if you've never lived in New York, people looked at me like I had 7 heads. And those were the closest people to me because no one else knew. It just opened my horizons. And that is what I encourage everyone to feel in their 20s, is that it's such an exploratory period of your life. Take fucking advantage of it. Don't stress about what job you have. Don't stress about if it's going to become a career or if it's just going to be a part-time, short-term thing. I think that after 2020, we really were exposed to a world that was so changing. And things usually change every 5 years, but that hit. That proved that the seriousness we take with career is not what really life's about, because the rug can get swept out from under you at any moment. And that was the beginning of my Saturn return. And a beautiful segue to the rug being slammed from my feet. And not like the magic trick when like you pull it and everything on the table remains there. Like this was like glass shattered. Everything fell on the floor. I'm pretty sure the legs on the table fucking blew out. Like that was the beginning. That was the beginning of my Saturn return. And it started when I got let go from my job in Wyoming. This broke my heart harder than any guy I had ever been with up until that point. I can't even begin to explain the grief that I sat with. I had poured 15-hour days into this company, made this place sustain and function and roll seamlessly, had probably 10 hats on at the same time, and they didn't care. Everything I did made me grow, and I can take that away, and it really genuinely built my confidence up to prove to myself that I can run the fucking show. And I should, and I deserve to. And I've put in the time for other people and not received back the energy and the financial exchange that I truly deserved. And I got a big, firm kick in the ass right out the door. With shit kickers. I had been working there for 3 seasons, and I guess because they knew that I wasn't going to stay the winter, they didn't need me anymore. And they decided that I got to get cut. So I had no idea. I had a plan for the day. I was going to clean up my desk. I was going to start to clean up the supplies for next year and continue. And I got to work, and there was a schedule on my desk from my work partner he was the activities manager, I was activities supervisor, and the schedule did not have my name on it. So not only did the proprietor not clue me in, my friend, who I considered a friend and coworker, that we went through it this past season together and camaraderie, did not have the bravery to tell me that I got cut. And I tried to call him. It was his day off and he was in the woods hunting. So he didn't even answer the phone. And then as I was walking to my yoga yurt to clean up the space, because fuck helping them, I was hurt and I wasn't gonna do anything other than what the rest of my job entailed. And I ran into the proprietor, who was going for a lovely run on the property, and I said, when was anyone gonna let me know that I was cut? And his answer was, oh, so-and-so didn't tell you? Which would have been my camaraderie and partner in all of the events of that year. I was like, no, he didn't. So, broke my heart, because what that meant was I need to find somewhere to live. I need to find a way to keep my life going when I am 2,000 miles away from home, and I want to continue living out here, and I want to continue living this life that had been so fun and adventurous and life-changing, but I had to move the fuck out in less than a week. Granted, I only had enough stuff to fit in the back of my trunk, which was how and is how I live my life, genuinely. So I wasn't concerned about space, but it was this big moment of I just turned 27, and it was like, well, now what? I can't go home. I refuse to go home. I ran away from home a bit, and I didn't have that security blanket underneath me or even above me, and home didn't feel like an option. And it's a hard place to be in when all you have is 4 tires underneath you and some shit in your trunk. I had a partner at the time, and luckily he was kind of fed up with the company as well, taking advantage of him, and we decided that we were going to set sail. And it was either going to be Austin, Texas, because his family lived down in Houston, or it was going to be Bozeman, Montana. And that was also because his friend had lived here. So this really challenging point in my life, I said, I hate the heat and I really want to move to the mountains. I want to see what it's like. I've heard really good things about the area and I want to know what it's like. Well, I lived out of my car for 2 weeks traveling. We made a little bit of a trip out of it and visited Moab. I had to travel my plants, and just a funny thing about that was I was living in a tent pretty much, and my whole life was in my trunk, and I had plant babies to take care of. So during the cool nights, I would put them in my car, and then during the day, I would put them in the tent. And then we just made our way up to Montana. And the unfortunate part of that was, and this is just another wonderful thing of Saturn, it didn't last. And I knew in my heart that this relationship was never really for me. We had gotten into some things prior to that, and I should have probably left at that point, but I feel like I needed the support. I needed someone with me to give me a reason to go somewhere. And that was a mistake, I realize now. So the harsh reality kicked in, and I visited home for a month. And that was the whole plan, was to move there, visit home, check in. It had been like over 6 months again, and then come back and start my life in Bozeman, Montana. And the reality was that I did not want to be with this person anymore. It was the dead set of winter. It was December, and I didn't have anywhere else to go. I didn't have couch to sleep on. I didn't have a friends to stay at. And I was in such a state of fight or flight that I didn't know what else to do. And it was winter, so I couldn't live in the woods and I couldn't live out of my car. That's for sure. And I ended up trying to find somewhere to live in the crunchiest of time. I'm talking like a couple days. And I had met someone who was so kind to me and even offered their bed when they were going to be out of town, but it was 2 weeks away. And I did not have 2 weeks of sleeping in the same bed with this man anymore in me, and the tears and the exhaustion. And on the 8th day of going through that, I had to decide, and it was an aggressive decision. I do remember him saying something not so great, and I angrily started packing up the space and ripping it into my trunk, and decided I was going to leave the next morning. So when that morning came, I pulled into a gas station as I watched in the rearview mirror his sad face, which was terrible. It made me feel terrible. I have to just be honest with y'all. It really did make me feel horrible, but at the same time, it would have been worse to stay with someone I didn't feel the same for and live with that person and pretty much mooch until I found something more sustainable for me. And I couldn't do that. I've never in my heart been able to do that. And so I kept driving with his face in the rearview mirror and ended up at a gas station with my entire life yet again in the trunk of my car. And this is kind of a theme in my life, but I thought of the only thing I could think of, and that was to call Joe. And Joe is I like to call him my stepdad for other people, but really he's kind of just my best friend in this lifetime who did have a relationship with my mother, and he raised me. He raised me better than my own father. He raised me to be this independent, wise, patient soul that I became. And I called him, and I needed someone's approval to do what I was about to do. I called him and I said, Joe, I'm sitting at the gas station and I'm in Montana and I really don't want to go, but I don't know what to do. And I have nothing left, and I have nowhere to stay, and it's there's snow on the ground and I need you, what should I do? I need you to tell me what to do. And all he said was, come home. I was so irrationally driven at this point. I couldn't think of anything else. And there was nothing else I wanted to do less than drive to fucking New York by myself. 27-year-old me, let's just drive across the fucking country in the dead set of winter again. And my fear was that if I ever want to come back, though, then I have to drive out again. That was the fear. I was like, I have to do this all over again. And I didn't even start the trek back. I just knew the first time around was really a long drive, and I had enjoyed it. It had been with a best friend of mine, Kim, and I enjoyed it. And this felt like the hardest thing in the world to do. And he said, come home. And I started driving. And every single second guess, doubt, fear, everything puddled in my mind as, why the fuck am I doing this? Like, why couldn't you make it work, Karen? Why is it not working? Now look at everything you have to give up. Your whole lifestyle, you're about to throw it away. Couldn't make it work. All those inner critic thoughts. And when I got to the edge of town, I called my mom. And mind you, I had not hinted anyone in or clued anyone in on any of this. And I called my mom. We didn't have the best relationship at the time. We had spent a little over a year and a half apart at this point. It's not that it helped our relationship at all. It just added space, added buffer. And I genuinely was scared to ask her a very big question. When I called her, she answered the phone, which was a surprise because my mom never answers the phone. My whole high school, teenage years, she never answered the damn phone. Big deal. And she answered. She was like, what's going on? And I was like, Mom, can I come home? And she got soft and said, of course you can. And I fucking cried. I cried. And I said, okay, well, I'll see you in 5 days. And she was like, what? What do you mean? And I put one hand in front of the other on the wheel, or beside really, 10 and 2. Put 10 and 2 of hands. And I kept driving. And I remember, alongside all this fear, I didn't really think about what was going to be going through my life and my existence in these next 5 days. But my first thing was, I was feeling a little relieved. And then I hit a patch of the road, Highway 90. There's a pass after Bozeman that goes to Livingston. And there was a section that wasn't plowed, and it was like a foot of snow. I remember losing a little bit of control of my back tires and swerving a little bit. And then I had seen a tractor trailer completely on its side. And I'm just thinking, oh fuck, it's December. There's going to be a ton of snow on the road, so much ice. This is terrifying. Why did I start to do this? Why did I pick December to break up with this guy? Like, why? Why now, Saturn? And I was shitting my pants. And it just reminded me that this is going to be a hell of a freaking trip. And luckily, that was the one of the worst patches of the trip. It happened a couple other times. I did hit some snow, or a lot of snow, in Sioux Falls of the Dakotas as well. However, there was one more really, really big key to this hero's journey. It ended up really replicating back home. And it was when someone I had met at that time, when I went back to New York, was a twin flame. And 100% that this was not any kind of energy that was supposed to stay in my life, but this was what was really, really wild and surreal about this relationship. It wasn't really a friendship, but this relationship that kind of just happened between us. And I called him when I was driving and I was having extreme doubts after hitting that spot in the road and thinking about my life and how it's going to change and how scared I am to move back home because of all these fears and because of the person that I outgrew the last time I lived there. And also the pressure of being like, oh, I'm 27 and I'm going to move back with my parents. Like, that doesn't feel good. Nobody wants that. Which is also another societal thing. It actually doesn't mean anything. And that's what is also important about a lot of this is breaking down pieces of thought and behavior that lived inside me for so long and live inside a lot of people. However, I called him and I explained to him that I'm having a lot of doubt and my stomach is in a jumble, and he said, let's meditate. And I was like, okay, I'm kind of driving right now, but okay, I'll listen. I will listen. I will be open. I've got nothing right now. I really feel empty. I got nothing. I'm surrendering the best point of my life to go back and live with my mom. Like, I really need something. He was like, cued me to breathe, and he asked me about my inner child. And he said something along the lines of, who's driving the car? Is adult Karen driving the car, or is little Karen driving the car? And I said, adult Karen is driving the car right now. And he was like, okay, well, where is little Karen? And I said, little Karen is in the back seat with her forehead glued to the rearview window, pretty much waving goodbye and watching as the mountains get further and further away and not understanding why adult Karen is doing this. And that hit because I saw it in my head. It's like I could have looked in the rearview mirror and seen that little girl in pain, wondering why her mother is taking her away from everything she loves and adores. And that has driven me throughout Saturn's return. That exact image has driven me to exactly where I am right now at being almost 30. But there's a lot to fill in. And this was just the first part of 27. And this entire trip turned into a hero's journey. I had so much time to think. I really realized how much I enjoy driving. Even at 9 hours in a clip, you get a little crazy. But I was so proud and empowered from this. And it hit a point where I was like, I just know what I'm doing next. I know the next action, and all I have to do is just get closer to that spot, to that destination, which was home, which was New York. And I didn't know what was going to happen when I got there. I didn't have any job. I didn't have anything I could really fall back into. I just knew that I needed to get there. And that was what drove me all the way. I wasn't scared at all, surprisingly. I remember calling my dad when I was about to hit a really bad snowstorm again in Pennsylvania, and he wasn't home yet. He had just gone on a cruise, and he was on his way back up to his house. And I called him, and I was like, hey, Dad. He's like, what's going on? I'm like, when are you going to be home? And he's like, we got about 13 hours, And I'm like, cool. Well, can I stay the night? I'm pretty close. I'm on the western side of Pennsylvania. And he was like, what? Like, when did you, why are you What? I thought you were out in Wyoming. And I was like, yeah, things changed. But anyway, I kind of need somewhere to sleep. The snow's coming. And so, long story short, I beat him to his house, and then I stayed the night, and he was like, I can't believe, what the hell are you doing back here? I thought like you were living your dream life. I was like, well, I did do that, and I wanted to do that, but plans changed. And now I gotta figure out this. And of course, he surfaced with some things that made me feel a little not so great about going back to the same place I left, and there's nothing in New York, and what are you going to do? And those fears that he projected on me because he was scared of those things and took his life the direction that he did because he was. But yeah, I made it home, and it was absolute hell. Saturn's return reminded me of the relationship with my mother that I had left, and also the state of my mother's chronic issues that I had spent so much time living away from, and had to put myself back in the box of her life again. My independence felt threatened and out the window. I felt like a little kid again, living under my mom's roof. And the worst part was I went from having the space of Wyoming and the vastness of lands and air and mountains and breath and just desolate to no space at all in the tiny confines of my little bedroom, confirming how bad that was for me, how insanely toxic and compromising to my growth that was for me. Our first fight was because I shut down because I asked her to have a little morsel of space for some of my dry goods in the cabinet. Mind you, we have a decently large-sized kitchen, and that brought on the fight, the realization, the waterworks, this is going to bring up all the challenges yet again. That was just the beginning. So my whole life got turned upside down. I want to go back into Saturn's return, a big thing about it. I wasn't even aware of it at this point. I want that to be clear. I had never heard of this before. I knew I was a Virgo. I knew what my rising sign was and my moon sign. I did not know what the hell Saturn's return was, okay? I was just in it. It wasn't until I did a astrology reading with a teacher of mine from yoga school, Gaia, who is phenomenal, by the way. This is totally just from my heart. When she did the reading for me, it was something I kept looking back on and going, oh my God, she was right. Oh my God, this happened. I forgot about that. And then this is literally what she told me. Gaia is amazing. I will link her underneath because everyone should have a reading from her if you're going through anything or just want to learn more about astrology and yourself. It doesn't have to be Saturn's return. She's phenomenal. I'll link her. But the challenges of Saturn is it's the planet of structure, responsibility, discipline, and karma. So a lot of the challenges that it comes with is identity crisis, I had, career or relationship upheavals, harsh reality checks, letting go of outdated beliefs or patterns, and the pressure to grow up and get serious. Mind you, I just spent the past 2 summers living it up, realizing how serious life isn't, and got all of that ripped out from under me. I do want to give you guys a little bit of information just in general about Saturn's return, because just to open the door and pique your curiosity, whether you've gone through it already or you're going to go through it or you're in it, I want to introduce it and just get your brain curious. It's meant to change you, and it transforms you from who you thought you were into who you were meant to be. And that goes back to the beginning statement I had said about this version of you that was pure and whole and new, then gets lost in translation, and then you come back, hopefully, to find that person again. to be a wiser, stronger, more capable, beautiful person that's evolved. It brings long-term stability, purpose, and deep personal authenticity. It's best to embrace it. I think that Saturn's return really, it comes down to dissecting what happens to you because it's happening for you. And that takes a lot of courage, takes a lot of accountability, it takes a lot of reflection, it takes a lot of seeing the beauty in some really shitty situations. And I want to stay on the astrology aspect for a moment and then divert, but each sign has a core challenge, and this is fun. So Aries is asserting self without aggression. Taurus's core challenge is letting go of material security for inner worth. Gemini, focusing the mind amid mental overload. Cancer, creating emotional boundaries. Leo, releasing ego validation from others. Virgo, overcoming perfectionism. Libra, balancing self with others in relationship. Scorpio, learning to trust and let go of control. Sagittarius, coming to truth without escaping reality. Capricorn, redefining success and self-worth through integrity. Aquarius, embracing individuality without isolating. And Pisces, grounding dreams into reality. And so this doesn't mean that your sun sign is what you're going to go through during your Saturn return. It's in your chart, whatever your Saturn sign is going to be the theme of your Saturn return. So mine was in Pisces, and it was grounding dreams into reality. And if you remember in the beginning, I talked a lot about work and what do I do after college and how do I went for this passion, or I went for a degree in something I was passionate about, and how do I transmute this into something that I can get paid? And really thinking about life in terms of financial gain and really getting to know myself more. It was grounding the dreams into a reality. How do I take all the things that I'm good at and love to do and turn it into something that society calls successful, which I think in itself is not a great way to look at it. And I didn't think about that then. And I didn't think about the real authentic process to getting that. Because we think that we can determine and control how we get the outcome we want. And really, I didn't know that I had to basically get dumped by my favorite job in the world and then dump my boyfriend and then drive across the country for this hero's journey that flourished my independence, grew my confidence so much so that I felt like I could take on anything in the world, and then have that completely and utterly disintegrated by moving into my mom's house again and killing my ego. All that progress and then squandering it. Pisces in the 10th house is also important. So in astrology, we have houses, and each house defines something, a different life lesson, and how to apply that to the sign and the planet. And so for me, particularly in this Saturn return that just happened, and if you were born around 95, you also witnessed the same thing and can relate. Feel free to relate below. Love that. I love to hear people's experiences. And Pisces in the 10th house particularly is bringing dreams down to earth, especially in your career, your reputation, and life purpose. This is about merging spiritual or creative ideals with the real world responsibly and legacy building. A lot of it is facing your fears around failure, judgment, or being seen, becoming your own authority rather than deferring to others' expectations, and taking leadership roles, but in a Piscean way, which is a softer power without force. Facing my fears around failure and judgment and being seen was probably the first part of that was the beginning of my Saturn return of 27. I felt like I failed. I was living back at my mom's house, and that was everything I needed to think about and know that I failed. And I let that eat me away. A lot happened in that time to pretty much revalidate and prove to myself that I was worthy, that don't forget everything you just did in your life. All the experience of that previous job in WyHOMEing, I just threw it away. Almost like a compliment from someone else where it only lives in your energy field in your body for about 2 seconds after they say it. And then it's like, nope, okay, back to the way I think, back to those mental patterns that I know and am so comfortable with, and just forget it. Like, it's like the compliment didn't even happen. So I kept being challenged with this self-worth and really figuring out how to get back to being a confident person and in an evolved way. I judged myself, so that was my own doing. But another thing was being seen, because a lot of the times when you step up into a greater role, I get a high from it, and I find it to be very empowering. But that's only one aspect of the being seen. It's not a power trip, it's just empowering. It makes me feel really like I'm doing good in the world. But being seen is different. And so doing this podcast is probably the last part of this, because it puts me in such a seat to be seen, and that's never something I was ever comfortable with. I hate social media. I hate posting. I hate setting up a camera and saying something that's going to be useful for somebody one day or today and then gone tomorrow. But something I'm really good at is authentic conversations and speaking about my truth, because that's what I really know and that's what I've learned, and sharing that. And so this part is how I'm coming out of it to be seen by the world. But a lot of the time, those who fear being seen the most have genuinely gone through so much and have so much to offer. And that's the challenging part, because I was in this Saturn's return wondering, how do I collide what I'm good at, what I like, what I'm nervous about, but still feel I can believe in myself and really get the belief to do it. Because the first thing that blocks us is we don't believe in ourselves enough to do it, to make it. We don't believe it's going to be good enough and that it will affect someone or might do something for someone or might be exactly what that person needs to hear for the day. And so what do? We stop ourselves. We self-sabotage everything, we put ourselves down, we judge ourselves, and we tell ourselves we're not good enough, we're not like so-and-so, we compare, and then we don't do it. There's so many ideas that have been in my head that I tried to do, but I was too scared to be seen to do it and to really fully commit and go through with it 100%. And then I just move on to the next thing, and with no discipline, and turn into the Piscean dreamer instead of the Virgo doer. Another thing I've learned from Josh, particularly about Saturn's return in astrology, is that our rising sign is the closer version of our childhood selves. And when we embrace the energetics around our rising sign, that is when we step into the next phase and away from the old. Now I'm a Gemini. I've always had this great love of extreme contrasts. And I think I really realized this when I came out here where I'm living now, which, spoiler alert, it is Bozeman, Montana. So told you there was a drive in that little girl that got me back. But I love extreme contrasts. And being home for so long reminded me how much I love the beach and how much I love mountains and how much I love the shift of seasons when it's extreme summer and extreme winter, and how much I loved when I was going through college the contrast of the comfort of home and the aliveness of New York City, and how there's so many parts of me that really needed to embrace this side of me, that I can be a photographer and I could be a stretch therapist, that I can be a teacher of yoga and I can work outside and do plant work. And I didn't need to fit in any kind of a box that felt crummy. The Gemini is all about the adventure and communication in this very Sour Patch Kids kind of a way of sour sweet, and to embrace that. And all I did was just make my life harder by putting myself down for everything. Not good enough, you're back home, all the things. And so when I got home, a grave reality was that I didn't have a job, and what the heck was I going to do? I ended up teaching yoga for someone who used to teach at my first yoga studio, and then I ended up at this job that was working at a community salt cave, which just taught me that anyone is capable of owning a company or owning their own business. And I'll leave it at that because that was some woo-woo weird shit. My big plan was, okay, Karen, the next mode of direction is I'm going to go to Ecuador. And I know that's very left field, and so was WyHOMEing. But prior to WyHOMEing, I had wanted to do a teacher training in Guatemala, and I was too scared to do it. So I had chose WyHOMEing instead because it felt safer, and it just felt like a gut thing. And also I couldn't leave the country because of COVID. So I decided to do that. And then this was the coming back to that. I had very few dreams in my life that I knew I had to do. And this was one of them. It was go to South America. I don't know why, but you get that obsession for something and you have to do it. It's a dream. And it took me 3 years to do this dream. And that seems to be the lifeline of my dreams because there's more. And they all take 3 years to get anywhere very beautiful and to happen where I see them in my daily world. In the in-between time, I just spent crushing my soul. However, that was the next goal. I said to myself, okay, I'm gonna do this. I didn't listen to my gut at all, but I knew I had to do it. I knew that if I didn't do this, I was going to be upset with myself my entire life. That was how serious I was about this dream. And I also just needed something else in my life that was bold and big and gave me a purpose for why the hell I was back home. And so I did it. And this was when I was going into the later part of 27, because I feel that my Saturn return, I got hit every single year with really hard things. And not your average really hard things. It was like hard things that were just so ripped the cloth out from underneath you. And I do want to save this deeper story for another episode because I know this one's going to get long already. I just have a lot of things that have happened to me in my life, and it feels surreal and good to talk them through and reflect on things. And so everything's going to end up turning into another story. And that's kind of the goal of the podcast. So another thing, but I made it my life's mission to go to Ecuador, and I went, and for shock value, I metaphorically died 3 times, and I almost did twice. I would rather talk about the outcome of all of that for the case of this story today and get into the details another time. So stay tuned for that. But Ecuador, instead of building me up and having this amazing spiritual awakening and experience that I was really hoping for. Again, never have expectations. I didn't know what I was going to expect, but I didn't get what I thought I was going to expect. Essentially, the outcome of Ecuador was more failure. I was supposed to be there for 42 days, and my body shutting down forced me out of the country. Now, everything I had learned in yoga was to listen to your body, trust your body. But my ego was so much louder in that moment that I killed myself alone in my thoughts that I failed and my body couldn't sustain me staying. So I had to literally basically get an express flight out of there because I was in such great detrimental body health concerns. And some people listening will be like, holy moly, how could you not have just listened to your body and gotten the fuck out of there? Like, you did what you were supposed to do. And I was like, I fucking suck. And it's so real, everyone. It's so real. It's wild to me to look back because I never listened to my body most of my life, and it was the beginning of a door that was finally saying, fuck society, fuck the beliefs, fuck what anyone is going to think of you in this situation, because it only matters what you feel about yourself at the end of the day. It only matters how you feel about yourself at the end of the day. And I felt like shit. And I could barely even get myself through the airport. That's how weak and in bad shape my body was. And it wasn't enough because when I got home, first of all, I could not wait, sadly, to eat American food. And I couldn't wait to be on American soil again. And I did this trip all by myself. I luckily had a girlfriend of mine, one of my best friends, who conveniently was in the area. And God bless her. I still always say, like, I don't know what I would do without her. So I wasn't 100% alone in the worst case or worst point of this experience, but I was alone for the rest of it. Traveling out of the country is no joke as a woman, and going to like a third world country as the first place I picked to do this. So, and also the language barrier that I am not fluent in Spanish in. And when you're struggling, it's not any easier to translate Spanish. So without getting more deep into this, I just want to say that I got home and yet again, I was knocked flat on my ass because I didn't complete what I went there for. And I didn't get to celebrate and feel complete and graduate with everyone else that was there. And I was back at my mom's house yet again, except this time I didn't have anything planned in my future to run towards. I had nothing. And when I got back home, actually, I genuinely lost my job at the community salt cave, which was a good thing. That really showed colors when I quit that job. Only job I ever quit without giving 2 weeks. And that should just say enough. But I also got replaced for my yoga job. And those just 3 things. I was like, wow, here I am again. Square one. Whole year's gone by. I've done nothing. I felt like nothing happened. And I really just wasn't in the mental headspace to really understand what happened in Ecuador and why I apparently needed to go through it. And I went through a lot. And I wasn't ready to accept it because I just was so clouded with the self-deprecation. And I resorted to alcohol. And in that concoction or cocktail of self-sabotage, I just decided to say fuck it. And I started hanging out with an old flame that I thought was going to be the love of my life and thought that we were meant to come together at this time. And I really was in a bad place. Yeah, I really was in a bad place. And when you re-meet someone and you're in a bad place and they're also not in the best place, it's not a divine union. It's kind of a trauma bond. And so this was the beginning of the third, carpet, floor, cement ground being ripped from underneath me because I fell in love with this man. And I didn't even love myself. And that was the tricky part. And that was the essence of the grander lesson that came from it all. And really, that there's no other way to say this than if you don't love yourself, then you will not be able to love another, because you're only capable of loving someone to the extent of which you know what love is and feels like. It's not something you dream about and know and you watch movies and you can see and replicate it. It's really how you feel on your inside, because everything in our world is a complete projection of how we feel about ourselves. And I felt like life rejected me. I didn't know at the time that rejection was redirection. And even if I'd heard it before, it was kind of like, fuck that. And this very, very, very handsome man swooned me and dumped me on my ass in a matter of like a couple weeks. But it wasn't enough. I needed to know why this relationship happened. And it gave me something to think about besides myself. And that was really the big mistake, is that I, getting into this relationship, was kind of seeking out the what do I do next? And almost perfect timing, it was him. And I really didn't realize how dangerous that was. And I fell head over heels. I wrote something exactly 2 years ago on this exact day, September 8th. Now, I want to read it. I haven't even read it entirely to myself, but I might avoid names and things. But I want to read it because this is so authentic. It was only being written to myself. I guess I'll just read it. And it might seem a little dark, just a little trigger warning. I think that's really just the truth in this time in my life, because I was hard on myself, mind you. So I wrote at 9:01 p.m., I'm not sure how this year could possibly get much worse than this. Ha. So-and-so just said he's too unhappy to be with me because he's going through something that he's not sharing. I just fucking cried for a good hard while. I'm honestly extremely sad, yet the cards say that it's all timing. I am going to Bozeman. That's my direction. I can always pick myself back up. Who knows what time will bring? I'm extremely sad though. And it was sudden and unexpected, yet my intuition knew it. Pretty much identical in situations from a previous partner in different ways. My karmic trench. He had said, "You're never going to find another me." Basically. I said, "I'm still crying. I've been so fucking happy with him being a part of my life. Like no one since that person." And he says it's all about him, but I'm fucked up over it. I'm really fucking upset. We had plans tomorrow. My 28th birthday is Sunday, and I've lost my enthusiasm. It's all fucked up. I was supposed to stay, and him and I could be happy. And by the way, that's stay in New York. Ha. Now I'm talking to someone about moving into an apartment across the country in October. You really never fucking know what to expect in this life. And then I go into losing my job, losing my boyfriend, my new home in Montana, driving across the country, experiencing stupid men as a distraction, my grandmother losing her house, being depressed all winter, landing a job somewhere I had to quit, waiting for Ecuador to be able to move on with my life, and finally happy working at my yoga studio and nursery. But then I go to Ecuador and get so sick, which is what I'm going to go into another time, and I have to emergency flight myself home. And then when I get home, I lose my job. I lost my nursery job too. I decided to focus on myself, and what happens? This man walks into my life. Unreal connection, and a month later, it's gone again. Get my heart open and excited, and that's it. Fucking back to square one. 27 has been the absolute most shit year of my life. I'm grateful, but fuck. Seriously depressing. 28, please God, be better than 27. I'm smiling for all the tears I've shed, and I'm smiling as I was led mercilessly into the fire and pushed with no remorse. I'm smiling through the hardest year of my life. You taught me to be grateful and have grace while in the fire. And when the fire went out, to get my ass back up, even if it wasn't out for long. I learned how hard it is to surrender and to let it all happen to me and for me. To let everything literally crumble, understanding the fight doesn't change what is meant to happen. And at the end of the day, what is necessary must go, whether I like it or not. And I didn't like it, and I didn't let it go. So 28, I'm praying you're kinder, but I'm grateful for the burns. Honestly, this sucks, and it's not the end of the world. But man, this really fucking sucks. Happy almost birthday, Kieran. And then my birthday happened, and he wasn't a part of it. And I got so hammered until I cried on my bedroom floor in my childhood house. So 28 didn't get any better. I'm sorry to let everybody down, and I hope this isn't going down like a negative rabbit hole. But really, even in that last writing, you can see I was starting to reflect enough to say that it's been really hard, and it's kind of going to continue, but it's going. I did know about Saturn's return at that point. I probably listened to Gaia's recording a couple more times, I imagine, after that. And I wrote about everything that happened between me and this person. And I ended up not going to Montana that October and putting it off because every part of my being needed to experience this man and needed to understand why it was that I decided to introduce him back into my life 8 years later. Okay, talk about some karmic love bug that bit me fucking hard and still has a little bit of residue. I kind of want to sum up that relationship taught me a bunch. And it was not easy. And it is a story for another day that I'm not really ready to talk about. And also just fairness of that person. It's not really the right time or place to talk about that. And the third event that was possibly the most life-changing thing of my entire life and is a huge reason as to why I ended up back in Montana. But we got back together, and I ended up breaking up with him because I needed to live my dream. This was the last dream that I had. I had Ecuador. It was that obsession. I had to go do it. I couldn't change my mind. Like it rang like a broken CD in the back of my mind in everything I did. Every decision I made, it was like, well, how's this going to help me get to Montana? Or what does this do? How does this prolong me getting to Montana? Why do I need to experience this so bad? Why do I need to be here? And then I would go back and feel totally fine that it didn't happen. And I was like, no, but I really like where I am and it's okay. And I'm starting to do these things. And then go back to, okay, but when am I going to Montana? And also at this point in time in October of 2023, I had a space lined up. I didn't put the down payment down, but I knew where I wanted to be, and I was really kind of excited about it. And actively talking to him about it too, which was not really healthy for the relationship you want to succeed in when you're genuinely telling this person that I want to go across the country. I know you don't want to go with me, so I might just do this thing. I wasn't really capable then of putting myself in his shoes because I knew so badly how much I needed to do this. And that was blinding. In October, I had been looking for jobs actually in Montana, admittedly. And my best friend Kim had found a job out in Montana. And it seemed to be a franchise. And I realized they were everywhere. And so then I got resourceful and I looked if there were any in New York, and there was, and it was only 15 minutes away. So I simplified, and I was so scared at that point to leave this person and genuinely didn't want to leave this person. And so I decided I was going to go check it out. And since I could check it out in New York, why bother going all the way to Montana to find out about the job? I could just do it here. And I walked in the door, and I was in like some yoga pants and like a baggy something or other sweatshirt. I was not interview ready by any means. And I walked in the front door and there was a guy there standing and a beautiful woman next to him, Connie. And I was like, hi, are you guys hiring? And he was like, absolutely. What do you do? And I ended up telling him about my yoga background, and he pretty much hired me on the spot. And then Connie was like, you're such a mountain girl. Like, you can be like Colorado vibes. And I had told him, I was like, well, actually, I was kind of contemplating moving out there, but then I found you guys here, so I was thinking about checking it out. And he's like, you'd be great for the lead flex position. And I was like, what do you mean you want to? I've never had any affiliation with this job, this company. You need to train me, and you want me to be the lead? Like, wait, what? And I took the job, and it settled a lot of my fears for going on yet another solo excursion by myself, driving across the country and leaving this person that I genuinely loved. But at that time, I didn't process how much self-sacrifice that actually encountered. So much self-sacrifice. I took the job and I remember being like, let's celebrate. I'm so excited. And I basically celebrated with him for myself because I paid for dinner, I paid for drinks, and I made the plans to celebrate. So just a little insight of that relationship that I didn't want to believe at the time. But I'm so grateful in hindsight that I took this job because, again, it was another one of those things that I started from ground zero and I learned, and now it's a private practice for me and I get to be my own boss. And I learned so much and I met such beautiful people yet again. So it was just like WyHOMEing, where I had this unfolding of understanding how relatable my personality can be and meeting and collecting these really random, really wise, really beautiful people and souls. And so I don't regret it, and it bought me a lot of time. But another thing about the listening to my body aspect of all of this, when it came time to move and I was supposed to leave, like 2 days after I walked through that door of that store, I didn't give them a total yes right away. I was like, I said, I'll think about it. And I was supposed to be packing, and all I could do was lay down in bed. It was like some spell came over me that instead of getting up and being able to be excited and pack up my room yet again and leave mom's house and all these things, I got crippled and I fell into bed and I couldn't do absolutely anything about it. I actually FaceTimed my best friend Kim and my good friend Gabby, who saved me in Ecuador, and so I was on FaceTime with Kim, starting to have a literal intervention, and then Gabby came over physically and sat with me, and we pulled tarot cards, we talked girl, talked shop, and tried to figure out what the hell was gluing me down. Now, mind you, when I was leaving for WyHOMEing, I was like packed 3 months in advance, alley-ooping my stuff into my car, basically ready to go. And this was so different. And I couldn't understand why this experience was so much different than that. My soul needed to stay. I used to say there's nothing left for me to learn on Long Island. And that was not the truth. There was so much more to learn. Because it doesn't matter where you are, you always go where you are. And you follow you everywhere. So if you don't heal those parts of you, it does not matter. You cannot run away. And that is certainly a life lesson that I learned upon coming back to Montana. Because it's not like I found my dream and everything was just amazing and perfect and blissful. I was still 29 and in my return. Very much so. It was the hardest winter of my life to leave someone I genuinely loved and to move somewhere that was cripplingly cold and alone. But I want to leave it there for that experience because, again, that's going to be another story. However, I really wanted today to talk about just some lessons that, and I already have said a couple, but some lessons that I really grabbed from my experience. And I'd love to do another episode actually to do maybe some journal lessons that I have written down of different years of my life. And let's go down the list. Just off the top of my head today in thinking, and I know there's a bunch more that I've learned and some I've already discussed, but really see people as they show you who they can be, because it's probably who they actually are. This comes from navigating and discerning in my life what's healthy for me and what's not healthy for me. It doesn't make it good or bad. It comes down to like what's supporting me versus what's not. And people show you who they are, especially if you're in hard times with them. And that's up to you to discern then if it's healthy for you or if it's not. But the hard part is trusting and believing what they present to you, because we're clouded with feelings about that person and already preconceived judgments, and also pedestaling people, making them this glamorously beautiful figure to us when they've shown you who they really are. Another thing is the world got a lot simpler when I realized I could trust in myself and listen to those quiet signals. There were so many moments that I couldn't hear the whispers of my subconscious and my intuition, and I lost all contact with it. And even if I did hear it, I was like, no, that can't be. And it got so loud when I was laying in bed and I couldn't go to Montana. Because again, I felt like I was giving up and sacrificing so much more of myself for someone else. And I didn't even trust that that wasn't the right time for me to go. I was so hardened by independence and hyper-independence that I couldn't even trust myself that my whole body was shutting down in Ecuador and in that moment. So life becomes so much simpler when we just start to feel. And Joe said this to me around that time, and he said, don't try and get it all right. Like a bird, wet your beak in the waters and feel the chemistry. Nature will take its course. He said in the 60s and 70s, people felt. So it made things easy and natural and spontaneous. And that always rung in the back of my mind. And even more in this past year, as I've really gone through so much internally and alone, and gotten to this point of, instead of being that Gemini of, I'm not going to listen. I know what's best for me. And then doing the thing that was guided not to do, learning the hard way, I started to slow down and be less impulsive, because coming back to Montana was entirely an impulsive decision, and I did not listen to my gut whatsoever. Looking back, do I think that it was the wrong time? I can't really say, but I do know that it had to be done. I have a very wise quote that I created years ago that my best friend Kim and I kind of live for, and it's that sometimes you have to move on before the moving on happens for you. And that is profound, because a lot of the times we're not really ready for the change that's abruptly going to happen when we make a very big decision in our lives. That doesn't mean we're not ready for it, though. And that confusion is what causes the suffering. So I really started to get in tune with, like, what even am I feeling? And a lot of it I didn't want to freaking feel, because it was dark and heavy and muddy, and I was like, I'm living my dream. I wanted this so bad. Why is everything cloudy? Why isn't it just making sense? Why isn't it just easy? Why isn't it just, I had this dream and then it happened and now everything's good? And that's that expectation misconception with our dreams, because they're dreams. They're in our head. We don't know what's going to ever come of something. We just have a direction or a light or an idea or an obsession, and we don't realize the unfolding of that obsession is going to just happen the way that it's going to happen, because we're here to learn, not to just seek pleasure all the time. So with that all being said, everything happens for you. There's a lot of victim mentality around life happening to me and woe is me. And if you fall in that trap during Saturn's return, you will not make it out alive. And you'll not make it out the wiser version it's meant to turn you into. It's meant to create and evolve you. So everything happens for you. And when you start to change your perspective, even subtly each day, that life is happening for you, not to you, everything, I promise you, will begin to change. Everything. And like Joe said, don't try to get it all right. Wet your beak. Experience. Get hurt. Laugh really loud. Have a bad day. It's not a bad life, you know? Self-worth will hold you back or let you flourish. I needed every single experience that I've been through up until this 29 and 363 days to teach me that I'm worthy, and to be able to believe that and then emanate that outwardly. Because if you don't believe it, it wears on your skin and your face like a sign. And people can see it and they can feel it too. And they can take advantage of you, and you can let yourself not have anything that you truly want in life. But if you find it along the way, it's not something that you just accomplish and all of a sudden, like The Sims, you have a big green bar of self-worth and it stays there. Just like The Sims, it depletes and you got to bring it back. But the point is that you get to a point of comfortability with who you really are and comfortability in yourself that creates the foundation of self-worth. Self-worth is a concept. Being who you truly are and living that and feeling it and breathing it every day and not being knocked down by the things and the challenges that come at you in life because you're so stable in who you are is how you express that self-worth and show up for yourself every day so you can flourish. Big thing is, or another challenging lesson that I experienced is to not go backwards. Even as much as you want to, as the devil tempts you to send that text and make that call for the craving of something missing in yourself that you might not be able to give yourself, don't go backwards. Because there's a reason you moved forwards. Sometimes being you will be too bright for some people. That's another one. And cycles keep repeating until I stop them. I recognize them and I want to stop them. Sometimes we don't want to stop the cycle. We want to just stay in that comfortable space of what we're super familiar with. Losing people isn't my loss. It's a favor from the universe. And that goes back to September 9th of 2023 when I was feeling the great loss of my partner, who I was very much enjoying having in my life. Even though he did come back, it felt like the end of the world. And really, when people walk into our lives, they're here for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. That is the truth. And we don't know. It's that unknown. We don't know until we live through it and experience it. And sometimes you got to wet your beak. And I had to so many times to learn this one. It's like rejection is redirection, like I said before, and you never know the amazing things that could come from meeting someone and the amazing things that could come from letting someone go. And learning to let go is yet again another, probably one of the most challenging things of my existence, and I still will continue to work on that my entire life. I think that the biggest takeaway of my 20s in general, just to tie it up in a beautiful little bow of so many lifetimes and people I was, is to trust and believe in myself and bringing that energy into my 30s, because that is what is going to bring all my dreams to life. And I feel like I successfully survived Saturn's return. I'm pretty proud of that, actually. And just want to pat myself on the back because I really went through it. And to reflect and be 30 in 2 days, I feel so grateful for all the pain and suffering. And I acknowledge that a lot of it was my own doing. And I can take accountability for that. And I don't sit in this mindset of woe is me, and that I feel stronger, and that I'm super confident in myself, in my capabilities, and I'm going to run shit in my 30s. My 30s are going to be my years. And going into it with that perspective rather than, oh my gosh, my 20s are gone and I'm never getting them back. And 20s are really hard, y'all. But they're some of the most prime years of our lives. And that doesn't mean it just ends. We have so much more to go through. But if you're in the same age bracket as me, we survived Saturn's return. So good on us. Now it's just time to do the work and implement the good. Remember what happened and implement the good. I'm super grateful because I moved to Montana 10 months ago, and I have, because of who I am, gained such a wonderful, close-knit community of people and who were once strangers. And I have that handful to invite over and have a birthday party with and get to share my time with and celebrate this lap around the earth, around the universe, I guess, whatever it is, and celebrate. And these people want to celebrate with me too. And after spending a good portion, let's literally say 6 to 7 months, completely isolated basically, and friendless and familyless, that feels so good to say. And I don't have to spend my birthday alone, and I don't have to spend my birthday getting hammered to escape my feelings. And I'm actually excited to have bought a bottle of NA and to go into this year not hammered and in such a better mental space, and to be proud of myself. I hope that this was helpful. Talked about a lot of things today. And I have way more reflections. I'm sure they'll just keep popping up, and maybe I'll do a follow-up part 3, part 7 later, sequel to this. But I think that that's pretty complete, and I need to figure out a name for this podcast. Without further ado, happy almost birthday to me, and happy dirty 30 to anyone else out there who's a September baby. Virgos rule the world. And I will see you next time. Whenever this is aired, whenever you listen to this, please share the love. If this meant something to you, send it to someone who it might mean something to, and share that. I'm big on community support, and it doesn't cost anything to share and be kind with others, especially if it might help them. So, fare thee well, and until next time, thank you everyone who supports and listens. I care about you. Thank you.